So, folks, we are in the bad times. Um, Things are going poorly for the good old US of A. Very specifically, you know, we can't really get around it. This is what the president of the United States and his, I guess, secondary president of the United States are doing right now. Um, he who saves his country does not violate any law. And just as an FYI, that is concerning fascist talk. Um, it is a quote from a 1970s film about Napoleon Bonaparte, the dictator. That's bad, actually. It's actually really bad that the Republicans are normalizing the president of the United States expressing the opinion that anyone who acts to save the country is above the law. Meaning that not just the president could be above the law, but also anyone operating in service of the president. You know, like that's really bad. The issue is Logan Hill. The Supreme Court, even in its immunity ruling, did not give Donald Trump the ability to supersede the Constitution. This is a statement that puts the power of the president above the power of the Constitution. This is what one would say to their violent militias in order to encourage them to start doing random acts of violence. Now, this is all quite a big problem. All quite a big problem indeed. So it's also worth noting that, you got prominent people around Donald Trump Fed posting. America will be saved. What must be done will be done, says Jack Posobiec ominously, while Elon Musk yeses him awkwardly. If you have any doubt about where they want to take this, let it be shooed away. These people are violent. These people wish you the worst. And it brings us to a really dangerous time. Like a truly dangerous time. Worth noting also that this quote, "He who saves his country does not violate any law," was also said by Anders Breivik, a terrorist who killed 77 people. Like that's maybe not something you want a president of the United States to say. Maybe in fact that's bad. I just also as a quick aside, Anders Breivik injured literally hundreds of people. He injured over 200 people with a bomb, and then attacked a youth summer camp and murdered children. And in his manifesto, he said, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." So that's where that's at. That's how cooked that statement is. And not only that, one thing we need to acknowledge here is that we have a number of other very complicit people in our government. One of which is Pete Hegseth. Now, let's zoom this in a little bit here. This is a screenshot of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying, "Bragg is back. I just signed a memorandum reversing the name of Fort Liberty back to Fort Bragg." Now, that's odd. It's an odd thing to do and to brag about, ironically. Okay? Dude looks blitzed. He does. Now, if you know your law as it relates to the naming of military bases, you would know that there is a law in the United States that prohibits naming military bases after Confederates. You know, people who betrayed the United States and fought a massive civil war to preserve slavery and their right to own human beings as property. So they've done a cute little wink and a nod here. And Pete Hegseth chose to rename the fort after Private Ronald L. Bragg, a guy most people have never heard of, who earned the Silver Star in World War II. This is not being done to honor Private Roland L. Bragg. It's being done to name the fort after Confederate fucks. That's why they're calling it Fort Bragg again. So, yeah. Now, we do have to talk about what these fascists are doing. Because they are fascists. It's pretty obvious. You don't become the president of the United States, a country founded on the idea of democracy and of the overthrow of supreme authority and kings, and start talking about how you have like unilateral control over Congress and the courts, and you like starting to throw out phrases like "he who serves his country or saves his country is above the law." You don't that's no those aren't non-fascist ideas. Anyway, worth noting that in America, land of the free, this happened today.
We're in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site. Upside down. Everybody, most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on.
Yeah. A plane flying from Minneapolis to Toronto flipped. That's not great. We are now on like what, a couple dozen planes flipping at this point. God. Landing a plane upside down requires mad skills. I don't know that it requires mad skills to flip a plane. I feel like it's the opposite of that. It happened in Toronto. Yeah, you understand I'm not fucking saying Toronto's America, right? It was a flight from where I live in America. It's a flight from America. Jesus. I'm just trying to make connections here, folks. Anyway, this literally happened yesterday. Hundreds of FAA probationary workers fired by the Trump administration, union says. That's cool. But I'm sure it has nothing to do with the recent spat of plane crashes that are happening every goddamn day here in America or abroad or anywhere else. It's all just, coincidence. These hundreds of FAA employees in a department that is chronically understaffed, I'm sure they aren't doing anything important. Fuck it. Maybe, you know what? With the state of airplanes in America, maybe they should be landing upside down. Who knows? Maybe we've just been fucking up the entire time. Yeah, like destroy the infrastructure. Destroy the ability to actually use any of the things that we rely on a day-to-day basis, because that's how you loot the entire infrastructure. That is part of the billionaire looting of America. Yeah, you know what? I give it like a 24 hours. I give it 24 hours before they start saying DEI caused the plane to flip over. I don't know. This is maybe bad. I was an FAA probationary employee that supported the National Airspace Defense Program working at MMAC. Got my email at 12:30 a.m. today, less than a month away from the end of my probation and 6 months pregnant. Yeah. This is all great. FAA employee got the call during Valentine's dinner with the wife, was told to get back to computer and wait for 2 emails. Then they were shutting down my access. Job duties related to airports and airspace. Expecting this email to say, fuck you, Elon. Fuck you, love Elon. Apparently the crosswind was at 21 KT, and that was near the Challenger's maximum crosswind tolerance. Damn. That is extreme. Too bad they had a DEI pilot. I'm sure a white cis man could have saved it. For those of you who can't tell, that was a joke. An exhausted joke, because we just finished our DEI segment about how Donald Trump is trying to turn America into a white supremacist hellhole. I'm just losing the ability to properly add tone to my voice. What's the chance that the morons start trying to rehire people? Not very high, unless unions start winning lawsuits. Yeah, time to cancel Jack. It's true. It's true. It's true. Who was the worst president before Trump? I don't know. They did too much DEI in the libraries. As far as I know, Donald Trump is the only president we've ever had. God. Anyway, at some point, I would have been able to muster up a lot of rage about this, but I think I've yelled a lot this stream. So I'm just going to throw this up on screen and say, hey, maybe it's catastrophically bad that Elon Musk now has access to the IRS payment systems and all our social security numbers. Maybe this is bad, actually. Maybe his plan to fire a bunch of people from the IRS during tax season is particularly bad. Maybe it's really not great that they're going to like lose tax returns due to the lack of staffing. I don't know. Like, I came across this story, and like there are plenty of details in this, but like, has detailed financial information about every taxpayer, business, and nonprofit in the country. According to 3 people familiar with the activities, they're trying to get access to the IRS system. And I believe in an update since then, they have gotten it. According to a draft of the memorandum obtained by the Washington Post, DOGE software engineer Gavin Kliger is set to work at the IRS for 120 days, though the tax agency and the White House can renew his deployment for the same duration. Primary goal at the IRS is to provide engineering assistance and IT modernization consulting. Yeah. IDRS access is extremely limited. Taxpayers who've had their information wrongfully disclosed or even inspected are entitled by law to monetary damages, and the request for DOGE access has raised deep concern within the IRS, according to 3 people familiar with internal agency deliberations who, like others in this report, spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. News comes as roughly 150 million taxpayers prepare to file returns. Tax agency systems are widely considered antiquated. Many were built using computer coding language from the 1960s, and overhauling the agency's IT is in line with DOGE's mandate to modernize government technology. IRS contractors are generally provided system access to repair or maintain IDRS and similar data systems, but it's highly unusual to grant political appointees access to personal taxpayer data or even programs adjacent to the data, experts say. IRS commissioners traditionally do not have IDRS access. The same goes for the National Taxpayer Advocate, the agency's internal consumer watchdog, according to Nina Olson, who served in the role from 2001 to 2019. The information that the IRS has is incredibly personal. Someone with access to it could use it and make it public in a way, or do something with it and share it with someone else who shares it with someone else, and your rights get violated, Olson said. A Trump administration official said DOGE personnel needed IDRS access because DOGE staff are working to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse and improve government performance to better serve people. And just want to point out that we already have an organization dedicated to eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, and it's called the IRS. It's literally such an efficient organization that for every dollar we put into the IRS, to maintain it, we get $7 more back. They want to chronically underfund the IRS so that they can't audit the wealthiest people on earth. So, yeah, that's cool. That's normal. It's just waste, fraud, and abuse. Waste, fraud, and abuse. Anyway, moving on to the next story. Yeah, they're just taking a wrench to break as many things as you know. So we got this reporting from ProPublica a few days ago. Trump official destroying USAID secretly met with Christian nationalists abroad in defiance of US policy. And honestly, I saw this headline and I thought, that seems really bad. But honestly, the content of this is so much worse than than one would think. On a 2018 visit to the Balkans, Morocco secretly met with officials whom the American government had determined were off limits without the highest levels of approval. Ethno-nationalist Bosnian Serb separatist leaders. Those politicians had been working for years to defy their nation's constitution and undermine the American-backed peace deal in an effort to promote a Christian Bosnian Serb state. ProPublica pieced the episode together from interviews with 7 current and former US officials. Among those in attendance were Milorad Dodik, according to one of the officials, the leader of a political region within the broader nation. Dodik was at the time under US sanctions by the Trump administration for actively obstructing American efforts to prevent more bloodshed. The officials interviewed for this article requested anonymity for fear of retaliation from the administration. Dodik has since called himself pro-Russian, anti-Western, and anti-American in meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin and is currently under new sanctions for corruption charges. He's also vowed to tear the country apart rather than allow the US to unify it. Maureen Cormack, then the American ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina, discovered the meeting had taken place and confronted Morocco in the embassy at the end of his visit. Morocco initially demurred, an official said, before finally acknowledging the gathering. Cormac was furious, issuing a sharp rebuke, the official said. Cormac didn't respond to repeated requests for comment. Morocco left the country soon after. A year later, he was no longer working at the State Department. What he had discussed with the Bosnian separatists is not clear, but the meeting itself provided legitimacy to far-right politicians pushing for a Christian state and undermined US foreign policy, experts and officials said. Quote, he reinforced a whole political trajectory that is antithetical to what the US is trying to do, unquote, said one US official to ProPublica, which is supporting a peace agreement. After the State Department, the Trump administration sent Morocco to a senior post at the U.S. Agency for International Development, where he attempted to delay or halt dozens of programs, including those that benefited Bosnia and Herzegovina's unified government, and reinvent the agency to better align with his version of U.S. policy. That agenda, former colleagues told ProPublica, was overtly militaristic and Christian nationalist. The complaints about Morocco alarmed agency leaders so much that they significantly curtailed his duties in the waning months of the administration. And he's been brought back in. So that's cool. A bunch of hardworking political figures in the Trump administration trying to reignite the war in the Balkans. Who doesn't love ethnically motivated wars? What a great idea. Yeah. Immediately after the inauguration last month, Morocco drafted the order shutting down all of USAID's programs and freezing foreign aid. He's led the efforts to place nearly all of the agency's staff on administrative leave, though the courts have temporarily lifted many of those. Much of USAID's work has not resumed, according to interviews with dozens of government employees and governmental organizations, or non-governmental organizations, despite the State Department's claim that waivers allow work involving core life-saving medicine, medical services, food, shelter, and substance assistance to continue. It's an exact repeat of what he did, but at scale, said a former senior official at USAID who worked alongside Morocco during his previous stint in government. He had no problem stopping foreign assistance. He came in, he said, "We're going to stop all programming, stop everything going on in the field." During a trip to Serbia, Morocco, on his own volition, invited the country's president, Alexander Vukic, to visit Srebrenica, where more than 8,000 Muslims were killed during the Bosnian genocide, according to two officials familiar with the incident. Considered highly inappropriate, Bosnian Serb and Serbian paramilitary forces had massacred the people buried there. The invitation had not been approved by the US ambassador. Guys, I don't know what about me indicates that I am capable of pronouncing those things correctly. I don't know. I don't know what is indicating that about my intonation. I don't know what indicates that I'm going to remember how to pronounce that in the future. I appreciate it, but I'm going to get it wrong repeatedly. I can tell you that. And that's I'm running on empty, folks. Like I'm doing a fucking story about a guy who wants to reignite genocidal massacres in the name of Christian nationalism and has been given the power to do it. And that's just one tiny component of a wider picture where an authoritarian fascist has taken control of one of the most powerful countries on earth, with one of the most powerful militaries and economic apparatuses ever devised by man, and is using it to weaponize and arm the worst people in existence. And I'm having a hard time keeping it together. It's not easy. I know what my limits are. I know what I'm capable of, and I gotta tell you, pronouncing Eastern European names is not a thing I'm good at. I've tried. Yeah, Blar, the fingers of US imperialism reach far. And it's bad. Like, they put a guy in charge of USAID whose goal is to kickstart Christian nationalist atrocities and fundamentally disagrees with the concept of soft power. And when you have taken soft power off the table, what are you left with? Chat? What do you have left if you don't have soft power with which to interact with the world? Yeah, you're left with boom, with hard power. You're left with killing a lot of people. That's what this guy believes in. And he's been put in charge of the program that is supposed to help people around the world. Diplomats said his efforts undermined U.S. strategic interests in the region and, by favoring one religion over another, likely ran afoul of the Constitution's Religious Freedom Clause, according to the cable. They were concerned that his actions risk worsening Bosnia-Herzegovina's tense sectarian tensions. Oh, that's not great writing for Publica. By affirming one side's narrative while stigmatizing the other. They wrote in the cable using the abbreviation for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia is about 50% Muslim, with large minority populations of Serb Orthodox Christians and Roman Catholic Croats. He had it in for Bosnia, a former official at USAID said, and I didn't know why at the time. He was also, weirdly enough, inside of the Capitol building on January 6th during the insurrection. That's weird. And has repeatedly refused attempts to ask why he was there. So that's good. That's all great. Now, this is going to be a case to watch. Basically, folks, the Trump administration has tried to fire Hampton Dellinger, and he is the head of the Office of Special Counsel, a government watchdog group inside of the federal government. And they fired him, but they are legally prohibited from firing the head of the Office of Special Counsel. You can't actually do that as the president or one of the president's flunkies. So a lower court reinstated Hampton Dellinger. And the Trump administration is now appealing that up to the Supreme Court of the United States. As far as I know, this is the first case that SCOTUS is going to be weighing in on, so it's something to keep an eye on, to kind of get an idea of where the Supreme Court might be going on some of these issues. Okay? So that's just something to be aware of. Also, literally the other day, we had someone in chat being like, "Oh, well, you don't know that they're going to cut Medicare." Anyway, here's a piece from the American Prospect. The DOGE czars plan to loot Medicare. Elon Musk's coup plotters cut their teeth on an obscure Obamacare agency that burned $10 billion testing bogus cost-saving initiatives. 4.5 years ago, Department of Government Efficiency co-czar Brad Smith stumbled on a counterintuitive revelation. The most effective way to slash federal healthcare spending involved drastically raising Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates for hospital care. At the same time, Smith was running something called the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, an obscure off-the-books laboratory created by the Affordable Care Act for experimenting with alternative payment models, neoliberal for larger sums with less accountability. In its 10 years of operation, CMMI had spent more than $10 billion testing various methods of tweaking reimbursement standards in theoretical hopes of improving healthcare outcomes for lower costs. They had worked with United Health, Atena, Molina, and other insurers in 13 states to reward primary care physicians who administered more preventative care and collected more specific data on their patients. They'd work with more than 100 hospitals and mega practices to bundle payments for complex patients in hopes of lowering the ultimate cost of treating chronic illnesses. CMMI had spent some $10 billion testing out dozens more schemes, nearly all of which subscribed to an ideology called value based care, in which the central flaw of American healthcare is volume based, fee for service compensation schemes that incentivize overutilization of the healthcare system. And so the unnatural solution involves the government paying healthcare providers and various intermediaries to take steps designed to decrease said utilization. Literally, they wasted $10 billion to get people to use healthcare less. That is kind of like the entire thing. If you're wondering, hey, why didn't we just have Medicare for all and save $10 billion? The answer is neoliberalism. The answer is the economic political ideology developed as a poison to kill liberalism, to deregulate liberalism and kill it in order to make more money for rich assholes. So this type of mechanism literally put in place to bleed money out of healthcare, to bleed money out and to, try and find different, more expensive ways of doing healthcare. It's a good article here by the American Prospect. I do recommend you guys check it out. Gonna drop it in here because hey, that Brad guy, this guy right here, yeah, he's now in DOGE after spending like 10 years figuring out how to cut stuff in very creative ways. That's his entire job. Neolib, can I have my say? No. It's a bad ideology. And the people who believe it should get a better one. These people use neoliberalism as a cover so that they can get enough power to do fascism. Like, fuck these assholes. Also, hey, this is fun, according to Will Stansel. Hearing that the DOGE chaos hurricane is hitting HUD. That's cool. I'm sure nothing bad will happen when DOGE tries to cut. Oh. Department of Housing and Urban Development. What could go wrong if you cut that department? What could go wrong when you cut the department responsible for housing people? There's an immense amount of suffering coming down the pipeline, and it makes me so fucking angry. It makes me so fucking angry. The NLRB under Donald Trump is now doing a lot of fuckeries. No to college athlete unions. No to prosecuting non-compete agreements. Stay or pay rules, training repayment assistance provisions, and other clauses that limit worker mobility, i.e., workers being able to just be disposed of. Overturning restrictions on including confidentiality and non-disparagement provisions in severance agreements. Overturning make-whole remedies for victims of unfair labor practices, overturning lower standards for bargaining orders, overturning the prohibition on captive audience meetings. That's right, folks. Donald Trump has made America great again by letting your boss force you to sit in anti-union meetings. Hooray! It's great! Caleb Harris, did you say everyone gets an Airbnb to live in? Because guess what? You just predicted the next thing! Billionaire Airbnb co-founder is said to take role in Musk's government initiative.
I'm going to unplug from my mental health now. Everyone have a nice night.
Good night, one-eyed heathen. That's right. One of Elon Musk's best friends is one of the co-founders of Airbnb. And he's coming in to work for DOGE. And he's gonna fucking, you fucking know he's gonna be sent into HUD. You fucking know this rich fuck is going to like monetize housing like low income families. I hate it. I hate it so much. How many billionaires are in this administration? It's probably like 25, 30. Also, in case you're wondering, hey, does anyone know exactly what he's going to do? Nope. It's not clear what precisely Mr. Gabia will do or how formal his role will be. Many members of Mr. Musk's government overhaul effort float among agencies depending on the day's tasks. You know, a normal thing for a group of unaccountable appointed officials to do. Many of them consider their center of gravity to be the Office of Personnel Management or the General Services Administration. So, you know, cool stuff. He'll just float around doing Airbnb things. Oh, also, fuck the Washington Post, specifically. Apparently, people bought an ad for Fire Elon Musk. And Elon Musk's rich billionaire friend, Jeff Bezos, said, nah, we're not running that ad. They turned down $115,000. Cool. Also, hey, do you guys like having a yearly flu vaccine that keeps you safe from the seasonal flu? Relatively? Do you guys like that? Because, on Friday night, HHS ordered CDC to take down all flu vaccine campaign materials from its website. Materials are starting to come down. For example, a campaign explaining that flu shot can reduce flu severity from wild to mild is now offline. Left images from Friday. Right is now. Cool. You know the wonderful scenario of our health and human services departments and our CDC being prohibited from communicating with each other while being led by a vaccine denier, there's a very real possibility that our medical agencies aren't going to work together in order to make a flu vaccine that is effective. Because one of the things you need to understand about flu vaccines, guys, is that it requires taking the data of what flu is becoming more prevalent in society for them to make a flu vaccine against that strain of flu. Every year, they have to weigh the statistical probabilities of which strain is coming into prominence so that they can make the most effective strain of vaccine that they can. When these two departments don't communicate, they can't do that analysis. They also need to get data from other countries, which I believe they are currently prohibited from getting. So, yeah, that's cool. Good luck having more the flu every year. I genuinely didn't know you could get vaccinated for the flu yearly. I don't think I've ever had that done. Yeah, every like pharmacy has like a seasonal flu vaccine that you can get. Also, like a seasonal, like if you go to your doctor's office, you can request it. Okay. We're almost done. We're almost done. We're gonna do this thing. So, hey guys, just gonna throw this up on screen. This is Dom Luker. He's a big Twitter personality. I got invited to the White House. This is so hard to believe. I'm at a loss of words. None of this would be possible without my amazing family. By family, I mean my audience. You have all brought me so far. I intend to continue to make all of you proud. There are so many black conservatives that have helped change the narrative that deserves an invite. I hope to help make their names known. Yeah, invited in honor of National Black History Month. So I guess at least one DEI initiative survived National Black History Month. Now, for those of you who don't know who Dom Luker is, he's one of Elon Musk's favorite Twitter posters and is very famous for posting child sex abuse images on Twitter. Yeah. Specifically, screenshots from one of the most infamous FBI training examples of child sex abuse. So, yeah. Also, very famous for creating and spreading a conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin raped little girls and wore their skin as masks. Anyway, great guy to invite to the White House. Well done. Like, inviting that guy within 500 feet of the White House should be something that would get a president impeached and evicted from the White House. Genuine question, how is he not in prison for that? Genuine response, I have no idea. And now, final thing to talk about here in the damage report. There's a piece here in the Washington Post titled Trump Casts Psychiatric and Weight Loss Drugs as Threats to Children. Trump directed a panel headed by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to assess the prevalence of and threat posed by SSRIs, mood stabilizers, stimulants, and weight loss drugs. And I'm just going to roll through this real quick. Yep. They're getting together a group to examine the effects of that under Make America Healthy Again. And like the Washington Post is just like, well, yeah, but the Trump administration says it's really dangerous. But, this chief executive officer of the American Psychiatric Association says that they're good. Who are we to believe? Let's see here. Yeah, here's a disturbing part right here. Right here. In an April interview with YouTuber George Janko, Kennedy said the National Institutes of Health should override medical privacy rules that determine whether mass shooters used SSRIs. During his short-lived presidential campaign, Kennedy proposed creating wellness farms where young people could get off SSRIs and Adderall, a stimulant widely used to treat attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder. Those comments were first reported by Mother Jones. A Washington Post review of Kennedy's public appearances found he also promoted these centers as particularly beneficial for Black youth. Quote, every Black kid is now just standard put on Adderall, on SSRIs, benzos, which are known to induce violence. And those kids are going to have a chance to go somewhere and get reparented to live in a community where there will be no cell phones, no screens. You'll actually have to talk to people, Kennedy said in a June episode of the 19 Keys online show. So let's just recap that real quick. He believes that children who are put on antidepressants or medication for ADHD need to be sent to wellness farms or camps. And that Black children in particular will benefit because they will be reparented. And it's not just like Black kids. It's also Latino kids. It's also any kind of non-white kid. Any kind of heterosexual, non-cisgender kid. This is horrific. That's what this guy wants to do for no reason other than he believes, off of anecdotes that he's heard and seen in the past, that these medical interventions are unsuccessful and inefficient. Yeah, it's very similar to residential school ideas. Nothing about what this guy believes is based in honest to God medical science. And I wish I had like a quippy way to make this better. I wish I did. And I got nothing. All I have is unspeakable amounts of rage. And yeah, as of 8:48 p.m. Eastern time yesterday, the top Social Security official exits after clash with Musk's DOGE over data. And just as a reminder, there is literally no legal precedent for an unelected billionaire to be able to unilaterally put in unelected officials and unaccountable officials into a position to access all of your Social Security data and payments. Things are pretty bleak. Things are pretty bad. Now, that was all pretty grim. So, I'm gonna try to instill a little bit of hope before we round out the segment. Okay. Um, number one ray of hope here, okay, is that a lot of murmuring behind the scenes indicates that a lot of the Wall Street executives who, you know, generally support Republicans and they really want those tax cuts, really, really don't like the market instability that Donald Trump is introducing. And you can kind of see this in some of the off the record or like anonymous quotes from Wall Street folks that you're seeing sprinkled into different pieces about what's happening. Okay. And one of the things to be aware of is that all of this, everything that is happening, all of this pain that we're seeing coming down the pipe does eventually come out and hit us. But it doesn't just hit us. Those of you who are here paying attention, it doesn't just hit us. It hits everybody. And that kind of pain that is coming is going to be a rude awakening for a lot of folks, but it's also going to be an opportunity. It's going to be an opportunity for class consciousness, for mobilizing people, for getting people out on the streets, okay? And one of the things here that I view as kind of our collective job for the next little while here is to protest, to apply pressure, to get the word out to as many people as we can in order to create an environment that emboldens people who are currently speaking anonymously to come forward publicly. Because a lot of people are scared of being the first person to speak up. And it becomes a lot less scary to speak up about how something's wrong when suddenly there are thousands of protesters. Or there are, thousands of phone calls in the office. It makes it a lot easier to say something when that pressure is there. Okay? It is a classic issue. A lot of people recognize the issue, but they fear the cost of speaking out. One of the ways we can lower those costs is by amping up the pressure collectively. Okay? That's number one. Number two, weird conversation happening in Twitch chat. Sorry. Number two is that people in positions of power and authority do recognize what is happening. Here's a great example from The New Yorker. This is an interview that The New Yorker did with Anthony Romero, the ACLU's executive director. And this interview is titled, "We Might Have to Shut Down the Country." And I do think that this is pretty interesting. But one of the things here that I find interesting is this entire initial interaction. Let's begin with the most essential question, legal and political. Are we less than a month into the Trump administration on the brink of a constitutional crisis? I think we could very well be there. We are at the Rubicon. Whether we've crossed it is yet to be determined. Well, describe what the Rubicon is. The Rubicon is the flagrant disabuse of judicial power. If the Trump administration decides to run the gauntlet and openly defy a judicial order in a way that is not about an appeal, it's not about clarifying, it's not about getting a congressional fix, but open defiance of a judicial order, then I think we're there. So that's pretty interesting. Where do you think the Rubicon will be? On what issue and in what court? The one I'm most worried about is birthright citizenship. That was the first executive order. That was the first case we filed 2 hours after he signed it. Yeah. So keep an eye on that birthright citizenship case. Because if that is the Rubicon for the ACLU, and I have no reason to believe it is not the Rubicon for the ACLU, then we could see a massive mobilization if that case goes all the way to the Supreme Court and the Trump administration just says no. We're not going to acknowledge that. Well, yeah, mildly muscular MILF. I agree that we crossed it. But what will be interesting is seeing the mobilization of the American Civil Liberties Union. That will be interesting. That will be impactful. That can actually break the entire goddamn machine. Okay? So that is really interesting, and to me, really, really valuable. Wait, how would that be impactful? That there are over 4 million people in the ACLU across the entire country. Mobilizing 4 million people? That's a big deal. 4 million people mobilized from one of the most important and powerful civil liberties groups in the country, with connections to so many different unions. Like, the ACLU is like part of the glue that holds American unions together, you know? The wave of anti-Tesla protests outside of various dealerships has borne some fruit. It's been covered in Fast Company, in a number of business outlets, also talking about, hey, a lot of people showing up outside these dealerships. What's up with that? And that's pretty cool. Okay? Like, the protests and the pressure are working, and we only have like a limited number of folks out there protesting so far. I would encourage folks to keep it up. That being said, this is a very important and very interesting news tip from Futurism. Insiders at Tesla concerned that Musk's madness is damaging company, saying it would be better if he just resigned. He seems to have ghosted his own company. This is according to the Washington Post, I guess. But yeah. The employees range from rank and file to senior managers. At a recent staff meeting, some of these managers expressed that the company would be better off if Musk resigned, per Washington Post. And that is interesting. While Musk might get away with a Nazi-like salute in some parts of the world, European markets reject such behavior. Tim Kruijswanger, founder of the Dutch Tesla blog Tesla360.nl, told Wired, World War II still casts a long shadow. Which, yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting that a lot of folks within Tesla in different ranks throughout the company are kind of being like, yeah, we should oust him. He should get out. Can't the board vote him off? I'm not sure about the internal setup at Tesla, but in theory, yeah. Now, this is also very interesting from last week. This comes from Lisa Murkowski's office. Those of you who don't know, Lisa Murkowski is a Republican in Alaska. One of the first executive orders that Donald Trump passed was to rename one of the tallest peaks in Alaska from Denali to Mount McKinley. Okay? And Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, today introduced legislation that would officially designate North America's highest mountain as Denali, a name bestowed by Alaska's Koyukon Athabascans. The bill would require that any reference in U.S. laws, maps, and regulations for other records refer to the mountain as Denali. In Alaska, it's Denali. Once you see it in person and take in the majesty of its size and breathe it in its cold air, you can understand why the Yukon Athabascans referred to it as the Great One. This isn't a political issue. Alaskans from every walk of life have long been advocating for this mountain to be recognized by its true name. That's why today I once again introduced legislation that would officially keep the mountain's quintessential name, Denali. And that is very interesting because it represents a direct break with Donald Trump. I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're going to see more and more of these positionings that break a little bit away from Donald Trump, testing the waters for what it looks like to run slightly askew of Donald Trump's priorities. And then we're going to see a little bit farther. The opportunity window, seeing how much they can get away with, okay? And I think that's interesting. Obviously, this is not a meaningful break at this point, but it's interesting nonetheless. Also, shout out here to David Dane for the American Prospect, writing a piece called Yes, the Price of Eggs Matters. And I'm going to go ahead here towards the end. Liberals are wondering what can possibly slow down this reign of terror by the Trump-Musk faction. Some ask Democrats to fight harder, some hope the courts or another deus ex machina will stop him, but the public mood can also check the presidency. And while Trump still is in his honeymoon period, with a historically low approval rating compared to other early presidencies, it won't last forever. The time will come when people, fed up with the weaker economy and higher prices, start to wonder why this unelected billionaire they don't like has all this authority, and what a new name for the Gulf of Mexico is doing for their lives, and maybe even why the president is seizing Congress's spending power. Keep watching that consumer sentiment line as it plunges down at the same pace as the emperor's clothes start to fall by the wayside. And I think that this is a really wonderful encapsulation by David Dane that, like, really gets at the heart of one of the biggest ways the public is going to check the Donald Trump administration. Because that line is already going down. There is an association between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And that association is starting to drag Donald Trump down. At some point, there's going to be a calculation made by Donald Trump that he's going to have to cut Elon Musk in order to save his own skin. I don't know when, but that consumer sentiment for Elon is rock bottom. People fucking hate that guy. Okay? And I gotta say, even if Donald Trump decides the trade-off for money is worth it, eventually that consumer sentiment is going to consume him. Like, it's either there's going to come a time where he's going to be like, do I value the world's richest guy, or do I value, like, people not wanting to set up guillotines? And he might choose the money, thinking it'll keep him safe. We'll see. Will he eventually throw Pete on Husk under the bus? I don't know. I can't tell you that. But I do know that eventually there's going to be a question of which he holds on to. Is it going to be like his cult base, or is it going to be Elon? And I don't know which way he goes on that one. Stock crash might do it. $14 eggs might do it. We'll see. Let's see. Here. I think maybe a good way of ending our hopeful segment is with this. This is Rua Roman. I believe she's House District 97 in Georgia.
And anyone who keeps saying things like voting doesn't matter, calling doesn't matter, emailing doesn't matter, being involved doesn't matter, to me, that's an op. Enough. We need everybody right now. I cannot guarantee that things are going to be okay. That's never something any of us can ever guarantee. But what I can guarantee is that if we show up, at bare minimum, we have built enough infrastructure together that we can take care of one another. And anyone who keeps saying things like...
And that's kind of where we're at. You know? That's where we're at. We need people who are going to help. We need people who are going to do their best to stand in solidarity with one another. We need people who are going to build upon what we've all built together and do more. And one of the things here is that no one is coming to save us except each other. Like we have our neighbors. We have the supports that we've built ourselves. We have, the power in these arms, these legs, these voices. We have that power, and that is not a small amount of power. Vote, protest, call your reps, organize your local area, organize online. Organize. Because we make the difference. And, like Rua Roman says, no one can guarantee you that it's going to be okay. But that's kind of the secret, right? No one has ever been able to guarantee anyone that it's okay. It is only through cooperation, through working together, that we build a world where we can be okay. And that takes work, takes dedication, it takes hope, and it takes all of you guys. As you work to improve things and make things better, you are not alone. We're all in it together. Whether you're someone who's watching a stream at 3:30 in the morning on a Monday night, or you are someone who's been streaming for 7 hours until 3:30 in the morning on a Monday night. What we got is what we've always got. That's solidarity with each other. And I think that's a lot more than a lot of people realize. So, that being said, remember, folks, call your reps. You can use 5calls.org in order to make that happen. Okay? Also, get out there and protest. Go to the anti-Tesla protests if you can. Go to your local indivisible protests. If you don't see one, consider making one. And of course, join the Discord. I'm going to be doing a little work on there to stir up some good digital trouble. And I do hope you'll join us. We also got different ways you can help the online community, whether through mutual aid, helping to transport, or any number of other activities. got places to talk about protesting. We got places to talk about basically anything. So join the Discord, and yeah, consider getting a little involved in the community we've built up to try and help each other.